I happened across a couple of crazy ideas. Because they kept telling me about the monsoons and all the fresh water and the river problem, and I was like, well, what if we used up all that water and used that for farms and moved it? I think there's a 120 mile or a 500 mile pipeline that actually goes from the Panama Canal all the way down to Cuba, or something like that. Like I don't think Cuba has any big lakes or something, or big rivers or something like that. And so one of my crazy ideas was, I was like, well, what if we used all that water for farms? I was like, we could actually feed farms. I was like, well, what if we turned that land down there into farmland? Uh, because we have all this water anyway, and I got to get rid of it anyway. And dumping into the ocean seems like just a waste. So I was like, well, I'm willing to pay extra if we can find a way to use up all that fresh water. And maybe even clean it out or screen it, because it's like, well, it's kind of dirty sometimes. It's like, well, maybe we can screen it or something like that. And so they did some screening tests and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, we think we can probably screen it and clean up the screens on a regular basis, to have clean water. Um, and of course there's spillways and all that other stuff. And then so like in Cuba, I started building all these farms to go with with the Panama Canal, because I was like, well, that's cool. So we're gonna have farmland too. So I was like, well, we better start planning for some farms then. And well, there's a hydropower plant. I wonder, can we get some power? I wonder if we can get power down that way. Anyway, like I say, Cuba and Panama, like my country is actually Panama. Sorry, my country is actually Panama, and the Panama Canal actually became this. It's a base, really. When you get right down to it, people are like, it's a damn base, isn't it? People are like, what are you building in Panama? And actually, other people were actually hitting me up, or hitting up my people. Were like, what are you building in Panama? What is this going to do to the world? And all this and other. So they're thinking like it was they didn't know what it was. There's all these theories about people like what is the Panama Canal project? It's like, well, it feeds farms. It's a hydropower plant. It's um, it's a multi-tool pretty much. It is 500,000 or 500 miles or 1,200 miles of pipeline which feed a farm in Cuba, and it's also it's all these things all rolled into one, and they were my farms, and and it became this giant project, where I'm just like I am Lucifer, creating. Sorry, I was a child when I did this. I was a little child. I was like, I am Lucifer. Anyway, inventor of steam and flight and aircraft and everything else, and the Germans even had to defend it a couple of times because somebody attacked it. I think like Spain or someone were like was like, we're taking the Panama Canal, and it's like no, you're not. Like, it's mine and it's for the world, if anything. If it's not mine, then it's for the world. Anyway, so like in Panama, I was like, there's all these tunnels and stuff like that, and it was actually like millions and billions. I mean, I was spending millions of dollars. Back in 1800, I was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in 1800s, and then in 1900s, I was spending millions of dollars in Panama Canal, and then after that, I spent billions of dollars on Panama Canal, and 5 million people were working on it, or like 120 million people, it stretches all the way to Cuba, and with the water supply, and then there's all those farms down there. At least there's supposed to be a bunch of farms down there, or there were a bunch of farms down there that were mined, that were planned, and they built the farms, and they were producing food for Germany as well. Not to mention steel was going to Germany, and steel was also going to Ireland and some of these other places, and I was using it all over there. And the Panama Canal became like this everything thing, and it was like, and the Panama Canal is like my base. And then later on, I do the Titanic and everything else, but that's not like Panama. Panama was my baby. I just was dumping money after money. Like all kinds of money and all kinds of effort was going into Panama, and it was like, um, 500 years of work and stuff, or like 250 years of work, and it was my crazy project to dam, or to actually use up a whole river's worth of water supply. And my German engineers were engineering it, and it was supplying food to Germany, and and my farms were producing food for Germany and all kinds of other countries. Anytime a country ran out of food, they could always hit up Panama, and Panama would supply them with food because it's my food. And then now there's all the shipping that's coming out of it, and then I had other farms that were set up in Germany and Ireland, and also farms set up in the United States, and then also after that. So, and that's all from Panama as well. I mean, all this metal, all the other stuff. Panama was like my ridiculous project that the people just kept they just kept going on, and from it there was like hundreds or thousands of years of food from it, and then eventually we got the better soil types and stuff like that, and the river water I think is pretty good or something like that. Anyway, because I think the river is pretty big. I forget exactly what the river is like with Panama, but and there's like some other rivers that also dump into the water supply or something like that. Anyway, it became like this giant. It's like this huge, long, like miles and like 120 miles of tunnels and stuff like that. 120,000 or something, like ridiculous mining, and it's my baby. It's my little darling. Like, I love you. Like, I spent $30 billion on it, like equivalent of, actually I spent the equivalent of like $200 billion on it probably total. But I mean, it was world farming, it was Lucifer White Star Line, it was the backbone. There was food for it from it, supply put inside the Titanic. It supplies food for nations, and it's like this wonderful project that I is my idea. So, and it was because I wanted shipping in California as well. But and because there's all those towns, there's all the stuff on this side of the state, and the world used to be all shipping anyway, steamships anyway. So, which were mine as well. Those were the easy part. Yeah, everything was easy compared to the Panama Canal, and but then it's world food, and all these farms and all this other stuff, and all the mining and stuff. And yeah. So anyway, so afterwards, there were letters flowing in for me from uh, from England to Germany to whatever, thanking them for the food from Panama, and the water from Panama and stuff, and it was, yeah, I mean, JFK, Nixon, everyone, they hated it because it just reminded them how epic I had been, and how I had pulled the people together to build Panama, and how the people had worked, and how the people were so proud and so happy of the wonderful Panama Canal, and how like 4 or 5 cities were built. Um, like 5 million people or 5 billion people came from it, or like a couple million or billion people, and like everybody was like, the children are healthy and happy, everything is fine, we're very happy. Um, Thank you so much. And plus, there's also timber forests and stuff, because I branched out because I needed wood and stuff, so I branched out into timber forests. So they're like, thank you so much for the house. Because I had all these farms and all these houses built for all the people as well, and I was paying people to build the houses and the buildings. So they're like, thank you for the house, thank you for the farms, thank you for the food, thank you for everything. And so that was all just pouring into the American president. Boxcars, 4 or 5 boxcars. It was ridiculous.